It's June. That means we see some reaching and creative articles. I'm going to go. Now, I won't hardly ever talk about 24/7, but I'm going to today. Dean Legge and Matt DeBerry. Matt, 24/7's got a story about how all these teams, Texas, Georgia, there's a slew of them. The article is the most overrated teams in the preseason top 25 since 2010. And they've got Georgia in here because I think this is factually speaking that they four times have been ranked and then in the preseason and then not finished ranked. Now, Georgia was ranked, I believe, in the end of 2025 or 2015. So I'm not quite sure which of the two rankings that they're using, but it is curious to see Georgia as one of the most what's the word here? Overrated teams. I'm a bit at a loss for words here because, in that time, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like this stuff, and for the record, on here as well are Auburn, Texas, North Carolina, Michigan State, the Gators. I mean, the Gators are definitely a problem, I would say, right now. And if you want to go back to an arbitrary date, I mean, 2010 is fine. Texas A&M. I would say these two, for me, this is the article. The title of it is most overrated, which is you could say someone who starts the season number 1 and it finishes at 15 is overrated versus someone who starts it at 20 and doesn't finish coming.
Yeah.
If they're like 26, so it's not arbitrary, but it's kind of what it is on that front. But wouldn't you say here are the ones that I would say have not done what they're supposed to do? Certainly Florida. I would also say Texas A&M since 2010. Florida, Texas A&M. I don't know about Auburn, but they're probably not so far from that number. Are there other folks you can think of off the top of your head? It wouldn't be LSU necessarily.
I mean,
it could be LSU to some degree. Go ahead.
If we're going back to 2010, I mean, you have to throw Texas in there.
Texas for
at
sure.
some point, I think. Miami is supposed to be coming back every year, then they fall apart and they
for
lose
the
the
record,
games.
because I know the folks at 24/7 are going to see this and hemorrhage about it, and that's fine. But what we're talking about is slightly different than what was written.
Yeah.
They're saying, hey, this is the data in terms of the rankings. But I mean, 2010. If you don't include 2010, then Georgia's not on this list. But go ahead.
And I think you have to talk about realistic expectations for these teams. When you expect Georgia to be in the top 4 every year, and they have a down year like in 2020 when they lose 2 games, yeah, it's not going to look great. But every year we're going to expect Georgia to be pushing for a national championship and contention, right? And being in that top 4 group. And when they're not, a lot of people are going to be happy to say, oh, Georgia's overrated. But, it's hard to say that, in my opinion. And yeah, I guess you have to go back to 2010, right? Because Georgia's
You don't
been.
have to. I mean, you can choose. You could have said 2050. I mean, who knows? It's a round number.
Yeah. They were a top 4 team last year. People thought they could three-peat. We talked about a three-peat.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean they were overrated.
Was last year underachievement for Georgia?
In a way, absolutely. You could definitely make that case. Still a really good team, but it's championship or bust at Georgia.
Right.
And most teams, almost every team, can't say that Georgia can. But as far as other teams go, I definitely think Florida, A&M, like you said, I think Miami and Texas come to mind quickly. What about Clemson?
So, by the way, Georgia was ranked in 2015. So, I don't know. And again, as I said, I was going off memory. But they did finish the season ranked in 2015. Actually, I would not have done this, but slightly higher than Florida and one behind Tennessee. They lost both of those games. No, I would not say Clemson. Oh, can you categorize your question slightly better as it relates to Clemson?
I'd say, is Clemson overrated? Let's say over the past few years. If you go back to 2010, yeah, they've got some titles and all that. But since 2021.
2010, they've done it. Since 2010, they have been not better than Alabama, not better than Georgia, and probably not better than Ohio State. If we're just being honest, if you take away the national championship seasons, which you can't really do, I think Clemson was 7-6 in 2010. I remember calling my wife from the Liberty Bowl, Clemson had played South Florida or someone, and they lost. They had not had a good season, and then 2011, and like Clemson's overachieved, generally speaking, for the last 14 years. Generally
Yeah.
speaking, that's what I would say.
Okay.
But did lately the last? I think they're
I'd say
just regressing to where they typically are. They were 6-7 that season. Go ahead, Matt.
I think Penn State is in there too. It,
Well, listen, dude.
that seems like they're in the Mark Richt Georgia stage right now. Good team, gonna win 9, probably 10 games a year, but they're gonna lose the big games to Michigan and Ohio State, at least lately. Now, Mark Richt and those teams did win some big games. I'm not trying to throw the program then under the bus or anything, because they played for the national title in that 2012 SEC title game. In 2007, they were very good. They won the SEC in 2002, 2005. So when I hear fans say, Georgia hasn't done anything from 1980 to 2021, it's laughable. It's ridiculous. They have won a lot. They just didn't win the final game of the season. But they are now, and they're in it's a totally different ball game. But when I think of overrated, I do think Penn State comes to mind, and I think Florida State could have been there for a little bit. But
I actually agree with what you're saying. However, under James Franklin, Penn State's won the Fiesta Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Rose Bowl. So they're missing the Peach Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and another bowl off the top of my head. I can't remember. Sugar Bowl. So they've made the most of their good seasons, I would say. With that said, too, James Franklin's only had 4 top 10 seasons in about a decade. Mark Richt ripped through top 10 seasons for a long time. I will add that Mark was going up against people who were winning national championships. James Franklin's not done that. I mean, the first season Ohio State won the national championship in 2014 that he was there, and this most recent season in 23, Michigan won the national championship. Mark was dealing with Urban Meyer and Nick Saban, okay, and Steve Spurrier. Those are not the same as what James Franklin's been dealing with. He dealt with Urban for a while. That's it. Not the same at all.
Yeah.
But Penn State, I do think, well, dude, I don't know if they should be better. That's a good question. I don't know about that.
Or are they right where they need to be? Top 15, top 20, occasionally dipping into the top 10 when they run through Illinois.
Who has the potential to be a better program? LSU, Florida, or Penn State? Like, Penn State's number 3 there. Like, they're not even – like, there's no kids up there, man. Like, for every DeAndre Swift, there's James Cook, Kenny McIntosh. Help me out. I mean, like, for every – I can't think of other legitimately really good running backs from the Pennsylvania area. How many really good
James
quarterbacks?
Cook?
Who?
James? Did you say James Cook?
I said James. I said Kenny McIntosh. Just running
backs.
Not fair.
State guys. Okay.
One more time.
They could have landed Noshawn, who was from New Jersey,
but that's
at
not
the time.
Pennsylvania. But I know that is Penn State country, basically. But yeah, we're dragging though, man. And both those guys went to Georgia. That's the other thing is you have James Cook. I mean, think of all the great players in Florida or in Louisiana. There are programs that are disappointing. In the last 14 seasons, it was 14 seasons, you can't say Georgia's really been disappointing. Why? Because of 2010 and 2015? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, they virtually played for the national championship in 12. They did play it in 17. They won 2. So that means they played for the national championship 4 times in 14 seasons. I think Clemson's played for it in 15, 16, 17. No, 15, 16, 18, and 19. So I mean, and people sort of want to make the argument that Clemson is, Clemson and Georgia in terms of where they at the peak of things, they both have 4 appearances, if my math is right, and 2 championships. What's Ohio State done? What about the Gators in that time? LSU's honestly disappointed during that time. Now they've played for 2 in that period of time, Matt. And what about Tennessee is not really. I think Penn State and Tennessee are more apt comparisons, to be frank.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's done exactly what people expected out of them. No one's expected Tennessee to win the East or push for an SEC title. They haven't since who knows when. But I think in the future, Tennessee is heading in the right direction. It might be a little slow, but same with Auburn. They're going forward instead of going backwards.
You
But
know who we left out of this? There are actually two
yeah,
people. I mean, Notre Dame, I think, is Tennessee level or lower. And just to be honest, but USC should be better
yeah.
than they are. Go ahead.
As soon as you said that, I said probably USC if
Yeah,
we're thinking out there. They had the Caleb Williams for 2 years and kind of wasted them. They
kind
lost a
of
lot of
wasted him.
games.
You're
They
being
had
very
a
gentle.
very, they lost way too many games when you have a quarterback of that talent slinging the ball all over the field. It's just really bad. I thought Lincoln Riley would have done a lot better, but even before then, they haven't had a coach come in and get that thing going, and that's a program with history. And
Yeah, but
I didn't think after that run they had in '03, '04, '05 that it would drop off like that. Now I do think they played for a Rose Bowl or two. I think I remember a USC like Penn State battle, and occasionally they've got a good team, but they've never been. They're always a team that could maybe contend for a national title this year and then lose 3 or 4 games.
but it's
So
not. It's just the southern part of the country is so rabid about everything in terms of the collegiate sports world. And it's not the same in California. It's not the same in the Midwest. I just got back from the Midwest. Yeah, I know they love Michigan, but they're not, it's not the same. It's just not. Now, Ohio State's close, though. I have to say that.
yeah.
All right. All right. Thanks for watching.